Smart 24, driving business.
A very good evening to you tuned in to Smart 24 TV. Thank you for joining us. This is Business Today, and with you is Rona Nahabwe, and we're joined by Winnie Wiyinza Nakawuch on the sign language interpretation. Before we kick into it, let's have a quick look at our top stories.
In Business Today, Trade Ministry urges youth on microfinance uptake as fear of high lending rates persists. Government World Bank devote over 78 billion shillings for museums and monuments to preserve heritage and tourism. And Finance Ministry upholds 29 trillion shillings target in revenue come financial year 2023-2024.
Once again, thank you for joining us, and let's have a quick, it's now time for the news in detail. Let's begin with the lending rates. Now, as the financial markets sustain the fear of high lending rates, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives has urged the uptake of microfinance support programs. The advice has largely been addressed to youths for enterprise growth and development, citing low lending rates compared to commercial banks. Pedison Mubele has more of this report.
Experts say that the Uganda government's overbasing on borrowing from local market is the main reason behind the high interest rates. Dr. Joshua Mutambi, the Commissioner for Price and Marketing at the Ministry of Trade and Cooperatives, has therefore urged the youth to take use of the government's microfinance support programs to boost their small businesses rather than taking out loans from commercial banks and fail to pay them back.
Of course, the commercial banks, those ones, the interest rate is a bit high. But government has tried to reduce on the CBR rate so that the interest rates can also be lowered. So it is a progressive thing, of course, but that's why we encourage the youth to take up the government programs. The Agricultural Credit Facility, the Small and Medium Recovery Fund, and other microfinance support center programs. Because those ones, the interest rate is a bit reduced.
The Bank of Uganda has always hinted on the idea of regulating interest rates as commercial banks continue to charge high rates even when the central bank rate is cut. However, executives say that the cost of doing business largely determines the level of interest rates.
Interest rates is a work in progress. Interest rates will continue together with other industry players, the government of Uganda. The key thing is to try and lower the cost of doing business across, whether it is our customers, whether it is banking business, and that way then the cost of finance will come down.
I think we should absolutely agree that the general interest rates in Uganda are high, and it is a makeup of the economic fundamentals. You know, it is about liquidity, it is about cost of liquidity. It is at what rate, you know, you have government borrowing, for example, you know, treasury bills, treasury bonds, you know, their rates are anywhere from 14% to 16, 17%. So the cost at which SMEs can borrow is definitely difficult. That is why we work with programs. So we work with sometimes our anchor clients.
According to data from the Monetary Policy Statement for April 2023, the Bank of Uganda assessed that even though inflation is declining, the risks to the outlook remain high with considerable uncertainty. The Bank of Uganda therefore maintained the central bank rate at 10% to contain inflationary pressures while at the same time supporting economic recovery. Sanche Rugan, CEO, Standard Chartered Bank, believes that if the Bank of Uganda and the Ministry of Finance maintained to contain inflationary pressures, interest rates will finally come down.
Everywhere the interest rates are very high because the global economic fundamentals have changed. Inflation rate is high. If you don't arrest it through interest rate mechanisms, it's going to be very chaotic. So what we need to do is we need to arrest the inflation. We need to start seeing that coming down. We need to reduce our borrowings gradually, which is what the PSST is doing. If you've seen, is, you know, between him and central bank, they're putting up, you know, monetary measures, fiscal measures. So I'm hopeful that we'll soon see some reduction in interest rate. how fast that can happen. Remember, we are part of a global challenge. I spoke about this earlier. There's so much that is volatile in this world. So a quick shock either way is not very exciting. So gradually I see that the rates will come down.
The government has tried to put a number of programs to address this challenge. You are aware of the Small and Medium Enterprise Recovery Fund, which the interest rate is about 10%. Because sharing from the banks and the government.
The Bank of Uganda Monetary Policy Statement for April 2022 again maintains that the Ugandan banking system is well capitalized, highly liquid and well placed to absorb the emerging interest rate shocks and to continue providing a credit to the economy. However, there is a need to continue monitoring as the events continue to unfold for any development that could trigger a risk of sentiment from emerging and frontier markets. Pedson Mumbere, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Moving on to fiscal policy amendments, government is committed to boosting domestic revenue for the upcoming fiscal year in a projected growth of about 29 trillion shillings. A series of tax amendments, including income tax, hasn't, however, been received with open arms as stakeholders in the business spectrum cite inconsistencies and challenges for sustainable businesses.
The Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development presented 6 tax proposals to the legislature that, if approved by the President, would change the existing laws governing income tax, value-added tax, excise charges, tax procedures, and lottery taxation with effect from 1st July 2023. Additionally, the Ministry informed the committee that the revenue strategy for the fiscal year 2023-2024 is to continue implementing the domestic revenue mobilization strategy, which entails both tax policy and tax administration reforms for sufficient revenue up to 16 to 18% of GDP by the end of the fiscal year 2026-2027.
The ministry further noted that to reach the desired target of at least 16% of tax to GDP in the medium term, government targets to increase revenue by at least 0.5% of GDP per year.
The government plans to raise revenue from 25 trillion shillings or 13% of GDP to 29.3 trillion or 14% of GDP in the fiscal year 2023-2024 in order to broaden the nation's tax base. However, given how quickly digital transformation is occurring globally, taxing industries like agent banking and non-resident digital companies could worsen the nation's unemployment problems, burden agent banking, and harm the economy.
People who are starting life, they go to their uncles, they come to you, our sisters, give me an upstart, and they start a 2 million banking, 500. Secondly, there are so many districts, including mine, where there is not even a single ATM or a single branch of any bank. The only way we are finding inclusion of the majority of Ugandans into the money formal sector is through agent banking. It is still an infant industry that needs to be supported. Burdening it with the tax at this time is counterproductive.
The impact of this taxation shall be that whatever tax that we impose on those companies, they will factor in and definitely, incidentally, heap it on the backs of your own people. So at the end of the day, it will increase the cost of your operation of business. Who are the biggest beneficiaries? The young startups, players.
The Uganda Revenue Authority is well equipped with skilled tax collectors and auditors to detect any tax avoidance in accordance with Income Tax Sections 90 and 91. It also has the authority to deal with businesses that are deceiving customers and those who are legitimately making taxable losses, in addition to taxing all trading losses that will reduce people's profitability.
A trading loss can happen, but I can have a trading profit, which I've explained. But at the end, because of these tax regimes, I end up in a taxable what? Loss. So the URA and my brother Musasizi is saying now, we should tax that loss. Madam Speaker, this thing has been around for 5 years. And all the 5 years, it has been rejected.
While it is vital to widen the tax base for socio-economic development, it is equally important to be mindful of the potential negative impact that excessive taxation may have on the economy. Brenya Katsime, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Now, heading on to the labor market obligations, with a growing labor market, formal education has been rendered efficient as various graduates are roaming jobless. Institutions, bankers, and Kampala Capital City Authority have today initiated youths on market demands such as career awareness, as institutions are advised to focus on innovation.
The Career Readiness and Employability Initiative aims to identify and close the gap in Uganda's educational system, since many young people graduate with excellent transcripts but lack the skills required for their jobs. In order to improve the employability of graduates, Lawrence Muganga, the Vice Chancellor of Victoria University, underlined the need for higher education institutions to change their course offerings from job seekers to job producers.
To prepare these students to fit within the real world of work, or even themselves to be able to create their own opportunities where they can employ themselves or take it further to even employ. Also, after recognizing that we train students, that some of them may not be consumed or deployed within our economy, we are using this opportunity also to launch another opportunity where our graduates that have not been taken within the economy to also have other decent opportunities out of the country. As we know, the country has become a small village for all of us. Now we are looking at nurses, midwives, dentists, medical doctors.
There is need for an overhaul since Uganda's education system is considered ancient and fails to address current societal challenges, resulting in a waste of valuable time and financial resources for both parents and the learners.
The education system or our syllabus in Uganda expired 50 years ago. In Uganda, children are taught to pass P7, Senior 4 and Senior 6. They are not prepared for the real world. That's where the problem is. They are not. We prepare children to go and look for jobs which are not there. For example, it's in Uganda where you find a young girl who wants to be a medical doctor and you are teaching her Shakespeare. How does Shakespeare relate to a medical doctor? You know what I mean? It's very important that we identify talents in our children at an early age so that we can empower them.
Ambrose Chibuka brought up the National Development Plan 3, a government initiative that has not yet been implemented, which mandates that all students complete a year of vocational training before transferring from secondary to university. Additionally, he encourages students to research various program backgrounds before enrolling.
I would suggest never enroll for a program of study whose return on investment for your life you have no clue about. I suggest that before people apply for programs, there should be an arrangement that enables them to explore the economy and understand what is happening in agriculture, what's happening in transport, where could the opportunities for me be, where are my abilities, what is it that I can grab within this entire value chain, for example.
According to the present labor market, there are too many young people looking for work, but employers are having problems locating candidates who are qualified. An International Labour Organization report from 2021 states that 6% of young people between the ages of 15 to 24 are either unemployed, poor, or engaged in unstructured employment. The Guardian states that 40,000 young people are unemployed due to the skills gap. 87% of graduates are jobless. This significant level of unemployment necessitates a change in the way graduates are trained for the workplace through career preparation.
There are things that I always say that you need to have or you need to discover in your life to make you stand out. When you enter a room, what do people remember about you? What conversations do you bring to the table? When you're on social media, for many of our young guys here, is it violence because we love violence, right? Or are we on social media learning something that will help and advance our careers?
As part of Uganda's celebration of World Labour Day, Simon Kasiate, the head of public and corporate affairs at the KCCA, has urged young people to develop a good attitude towards work and improve their skills in order to add value in their qualifications.
That we Ugandans, especially young people, are such a bunch of unemployable people, and yet we spend a lot of time complaining that there is no employment. The attitude towards work. Someone talked about it. Your attitude will take you where IQ won't take you. I will say your attitude will determine your altitude. As an entrepreneur, I have seen people walk in and the first thing they ask me about is huge sums of money. And you say, fine, I'll give you that money and more. But what do you bring on the table? And the next day is when their parents fall sick. The next day is when they have a headache and they can't come to work. When you tell them 6:30 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, but it will rain and they will not come in. They give 110 reasons. I tell my employees, I have a more comfortable bed than yours and your father's bed combined. But I have every reason to wake up and go to work at KCCA every day to be turned into a postcard image of potholes in this city. Why? Because I love my job, I give it my all.
Margaret Nachiganda, Business Today.
Now, as the Labour Month progresses, we are still tagged on the employer-labor conversation. Now, Douglas Opio, the Director of Federation of Ugandan Employees, joins us tonight to understand employers' position in regard to the current labour crisis. Thank you, Douglas, for joining us, and good evening.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here.
And I think happy belated Labour's Day, and I hope you enjoyed yourself and celebrated the day as you should.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now, I would like us to start from a lighter note, the Labour Day.
Yeah.
How crucial is this particular day for employers and any people that are in the labour force?
The world basically runs on work.
Yeah.
And Labor Day gives us that opportunity to celebrate work, to celebrate what we do to earn a living. Work gives human beings their dignity, but also gives the employers an opportunity to contribute meaningfully to society. So it's a good thing to celebrate Labor Day.
Okay. Perhaps let's just get into the deeper conversation.
Yeah.
The protective investment policies, for instance, BUBU, how have they influenced the enterprise growth for the labor market? In your opinion, because some of these initiatives have been brought up to provide jobs, you know? Let's not even talk about the presidential initiatives, the Youth Livelihood Program, PDM, that is supposedly meant to provide 70 million jobs. How have they?
Supposedly, it's actually true.
Okay.
Now, first of all, BUBU, buying basically locally, that's what it means. You buy locally, and when you buy locally, you help us to build Uganda. The president, who is of course the chief policy maker, was very clear on this. The more we export raw materials, the more jobs we export. So BUBU is intended for us to develop local supply chains. Rather than, for instance, just picking your coffee and directly selling the coffee beans, it can be processed in the country. And as we process it in the country, along that value chain, we create employment opportunities for people. So it's a good initiative. So BUBU is a good initiative. Then secondly, the various capital funds that the government has put in place with the Uganda Development Bank, Emioga, with the Youth Livelihood Fund, the one for women, is extremely important. Because for any business in Uganda, access to finance is the most important thing for them. In fact, if you ask any business, the first thing they will tell you about access to finance. So access to finance is very important for Ugandan businesses. Secondly, the issue of skills. And that's where the presidential skilling initiative becomes very important. Most businesses will tell you, I was just listening to the news even, Mr. Kasieto was talking about attitude towards work and all these things. It's real for all Ugandan businesses. So the initiatives are quite good, and I applaud the government for that. Of course, there are things that we still need to improve, and where there is the issue of money, it's never enough. The businesses would want to receive a bit more, which maybe is not yet available at the moment.
Well, that now leads me to my other question. I wanted to talk about skilling, but I think you've hinted a little bit on it. Now let's talk about corporate education and corporate skilling. I'm talking about the normal education, university graduates, and the labor crisis that we have right now. The unemployment rate right now is about 7.5 to 7.8, and about 14.2 million people in Uganda currently unemployed. That is out of a population of 23.5 working population. Please bring us up to speed about what you think as the Federation of Employers.
First of all, one of the immediate challenges which we face is the disconnect between our education system and the world of work. In a number of cases, employers are complaining about not getting people with the right skills. In other words, the training institutions are not necessarily providing the employers with the skills that they require. I'll give you a very basic example. Not long ago, we were talking about the oil and gas sector, and everybody was excited about it. Everybody thought, now we'll get a job. But we were shocked to realize that even just basic skills like welding, we didn't have. I mean, those who are certified to operate within the oil and gas sector. But I'm glad the government has responded to this concern. That's how we get to have Chigumba Training Institute being established. On the side of skills, linking the training institutions and the world of work, that's also how we get to have the TVET policy 2019, which is coined around an employer-led TVET system. So the government is bringing the employers on board so that we can influence the curriculum in the training institutions, and hopefully the transition from school to work would be a lot easier. But at the moment, that transition is not smooth, and that's why increasingly we are finding a lot of our people unemployed. But the other challenge that we face with the skill, of course, the 21st century skills, more recent skills like artificial intelligence, cyber security. There are skills that employers can't still find on our market.
Yes.
I will give you a very basic example. For instance, sugar technologies. The whole of Uganda, which training institution is there for sugar technologies? But we have more than 10 factories. What does that mean? Usually then the employer is forced to hire somebody from abroad, and then this person is required to train Ugandans on how to work in a sugar processing plant.
Maybe not, I agree with you, I think 100%, but maybe to drive away from the technical skills and the industrial skills and whatsoever, let's look at the corporate skills, because I can assure you that the biggest percentage of the youths have in mind the corporate, kind of jobs that they would want to have. Perhaps a graduate in law wants to practice law, but they can't find jobs. The releases of universities every year of the graduates out there. What do you make of that, and what do you think government can do in regards to that?
I think the emphasis has been, first of all, a lot on work ethics, and that's one of the things that this Labour Day we are celebrating, the issue of work ethics. Aside from technical skills, employees need other complementary skills, more commonly referred to as soft skills. These soft skills, for instance, the issue of innovation and creativity. An employer would like to see, how can you create more value within my workplace? So it's, when I hire you as a lawyer, what more are you going to bring to the table other than your academic paper? Can you make the way we operate different? Can you identify a new client base for us? What exactly can you do? So the employers are keen. Are you a team player? When you get into the workplace, are you able to work with your colleagues? Because that's extremely important for any workplace. Or when you get into a workplace, you create more trouble. You'll make basically work not to flow. So skills, and more so now, digital skills.
There is a very big conversation we could have about Labour Day, from labor externalization to labor equality and labor, mistreatment of workers. But now let's just get right into that. Today was World Press Day, and you can ascertain with me that journalists are one of those people that are brutally, injured. They are intimidated. There's a lot of violence in regards to that. Not even journalists alone. There are some people in industries that work with no PPE, and the employers don't take the initiative to make sure that they do have the PPE. So there is a lot of danger on people in the labor force. And the Investment Code Act was meant to be reviewed and handle this issue. But what is the progress with that, and what do you make of the kind of people that are that brutalize some of these workers to that level?
Violence or harassment of workers anywhere is unacceptable. Sometimes it's done out of ignorance, sometimes it's done deliberately. But I can tell you with full confidence there are very few employers who deliberately want to cause trouble for their employees. In fact, you shouldn't even call yourself an employer. So respecting labor standards is not up for negotiation. The issue of occupational safety and health of your employees, that's not up for negotiation. Ensuring that they have contracts, paying them on time, ensuring that they're safe in their workplace is not up for negotiation. Now, as you already understand, there have been gaps in implementation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there have been gaps in implementation, but I can assure you, the reforms that we are having now, you're speaking about the investment code, you're speaking about the Employment Act, is because we want to address those gaps. In other words, whatever is not outlawed is allowed. I'll give you a very basic example which can lead to exploitation and challenges on the part of the employee, but also on the part of the employer. In Uganda, you can issue an oral contract.
Yes.
Yeah. You can issue an oral contract. You can get somebody and say, come and start work tomorrow. I'll pay you 40,000. But this 40,000 is not written anywhere. Now, at the end of the month, the employee is claiming their wages. The employer is saying, I didn't agree to pay you 40, I agreed to pay you 20. But
the contract can be,
it's verbal.
Yes.
Yes, somebody can change it. But why is that happening in our economy? Is because it's not outlawed to issue an oral contract. Now, when you make it illegal for somebody to issue an oral contract, then everything will be put in writing. These are the kinds of amendments that we will have in the new Employment Act. For instance, the issue of unpaid leave is not within our law. Thankfully, the ministry was actively engaged with us, the employers and the trade unions, and we agreed as a tripartite. But it actually does not exist within our law. But as we have known now with COVID-19 and all these things, unpaid leave is important. Somebody might just want to take a break from work. They're not keen to resign, but for some reason, they're just mental health and all these things. They want to take a break. But you don't have that provision within our Employment Act at the moment. So those amendments are important.
There are lots of underlying factors that could be implemented, but you see, there's really a lot at stake.
Yeah, sure.
For enterprise growth, employees' rights need to be respected.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because this is humanity we are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was recently at one of a release of the disability report, and the people with disabilities were saying that they are sidelined, that they think they don't have collateral, they are not given loans. What have you done in that angle as the Federation of Employers to make them be up to speed and benefit, because they are humans and they can be able even to have more collateral than anyone with both legs?
Sure. So for us, a person with disability, first of all, is just the same like any other employee. So at the Federation of Uganda Employers, we are actively encouraging employers to promote inclusive employment.
Yes.
So what we have done at the Federation, we have created what we are calling the Uganda Business and Disability Network. Within this network, we are basically training employers to be disability confident. A lot of employers, by the way, are not disability confident. When they look at a person with a disability, they wonder, what will this one do at my workplace? Is there even a position for them? Will they deliver? They have a lot of questions. So what we are trying to do with them, first, to help the employer to be disability confident. Secondly, to support the employer to make the work environment safe and conducive for a person with disability. We can do for you a workplace audit and try and see, is your facility accessible?
Yes.
I like your place because if I was on a wheelchair, I would access everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are the things that when you move to an employer, you're checking. If, for instance, you have an employee with disability, would they be able to access their office space? If you add, for instance, an employee who is blind, would they be able to use their computer? There are softwares that if you're blind, you could use it. So we support employers to be inclusive. We support them to have the necessary policies in place. But as far as collaterals are concerned, the persons with disabilities, as long as whatever they have, that they want to put as a collateral. The banks accept that. The Uganda Development Bank also accepts that, so there's no problem.
Now, Douglas, there is a lot to talk about in regards to labor, and I want us to conclude on this very particular, topic or subject, the minimum wage. Now, the CSOs over the weekend before the Labor Day, they are complaining that the minimum wage was last set in 1984. For the record, that is beyond 20 years, if I could say, at around 6,000 shillings. And it has not been reviewed until then. So what is your assessment as a person in part of the employers' fraternity in regards to this?
Now, the challenge that I should first of all point out with regard to minimum wage is because people tend to look at minimum wage as though it was a wage structure. But a minimum wage is just the lowest possible wage that can be paid. It can be determined by sector. For instance, that in agriculture, this is the lowest you can pay. In construction, this is the lowest you can pay. Or you can set it for the entire country, that this is the lowest wage you can pay. Now, when looking at this, you have to look at it in the broader context. What is the biggest challenge that we have in Uganda? We don't have the jobs. Should we then already even start by restricting people from entering the labor market? Of course not. First, we have to try as much as possible work with the government to create a conducive business environment. Let's create more jobs.
Or is it because you think the enactment of the minimum wage might scare away investors?
It wouldn't scare away investors, but I think we would be focusing on the wrong thing. I can tell you that point blank. The challenge we have at the moment, let me give you just a scenario at the moment. Our level of productivity within the economy is still very low. Majority of Ugandans are basically considered working poor. Why are they working poor? Because the employers are not yet producing at the right level. We are not yet earning as much income from our labor as we should. So that also means that it's very difficult for us to pay a higher wage. Let me give you an example. If we said we are going to set minimum wages, it would mean, for instance, we fix minimum wage for domestic workers. A number of Ugandans wouldn't even be able to afford domestic workers. If they're not able to afford domestic workers, what would that mean for their work? What would that mean for their work? Secondly, we have a lot of informal sector. If we are setting the minimum wage, our formal sector is just about 10% or so. Now, majority are working in the informal sector. How do you only fix a minimum wage for the minority, for the 10%, and leave the majority of the population in the informal sector? It's important for us to move everybody into the informal sector. But most importantly, let me tell you this as well. It's a question of our skills. Whoever has skills, the employer will pay the right price. There is no doubt about that.
Interesting. Maybe going forward, and as we wind up this conversation, because our time is well spent, what should we anticipate in regards to labor this year from the Federation of Uganda Employers?
Now, in terms of labor, first of all, expect a lot more collaboration between the training institutions and the employer for the apprenticeship, for internship, for reviews of curriculum. Secondly, expect legal reforms. I've just highlighted a few. So the Employment Act will be under review, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the Workman's Compensation Insurance, several laws will be under review. But most importantly, this year we shall have the National Employment Strategy. We keep talking about unemployment, but we are now developing a strategy to say, where are the jobs? Where will our young people find work? So we'll have a national employment strategy, and then finally, we'll also have the decent work country program so that we can promote workers' rights, but also more safe and healthier work environments.
Thank you. Quite an assurance there from Douglas Opio, that is the director at Federation of Uganda Employers. Speaking of respecting labor standards, reviewing of the contracts, the Investment Code, the Employment Act, or the safety, what the employers need to do in regards to ensuring the safety of their employers That and more is what we should anticipate for this labor conversation. Now, Business Today will now take a short break where we will return with more. Stick around.
Smart 24, driving business.
The taste of Uganda in a new international park.
He must be rich, tall, handsome, from a respectable family. He must have a maid because at our home we do not work.
Conductor Masao.
What? Obadde olobye ku ssimu?
Yamunange anti yo TV enkolera.
Nyumirwa omulembe omupya ogujjudde ebisanyusa omuli emikutu gya TV egisukka mu 8 n'egya radio nga kwotadde ne zifirimu ng'osinziirira wonna w'oli. Genda mu App Store oteeke app ya GOTV channels ku simu yo olwo onyumirwa ennaku 3 ng'olabira bwereere ewatali kozesa data. GOTV channels.
Smart 24, driving business.
Yeah, welcome back from that short commercial break, and thank you for sticking with us. You're still watching Business Today. And moving on, the National Agricultural Research Organization, Guide Leisure Farm, an enterprise entity among other stakeholders, have together collaborated youths in Western Uganda for agricultural enterprises. Skilling and technological transfer has been emphasized in this initiative.
Recent data indicates that Uganda's economy is expanding at an average rate of 6.5% per year, with the southwest region being a prominent location for investment. The area has a lot of potential for agriculture and tourism due to its fertile terrain, pleasant climate, and a plenty of natural resources. The youth population in Uganda is a significant demographic force that has the potential to propel the economy and development of the nation. The southwestern area is hardly an exception, with youngsters making up over 70% of the population. This young population is an untapped resource for the area's agriculture industry, which has the potential to significantly boost the economy of the nation.
The last statistics that we got is that Isinjiro brings out 500 trucks of matoke every day. That is not something small. That means that money is actually coming to the region. There is somebody leaving money in the region, but there's also somebody being well nourished out here. So when you look at our population in Uganda, over 70% is youth. And when you go to this region as well, equally the same percentage is youth. When the youth is well positioned for agriculture, and you don't have the youth engaged in agriculture, it's a missed opportunity. because you miss the big number of people that should be in agriculture.
We are encouraging the youth that in the morning it is working. In the morning it is being dirty. Go in the field, work. Afternoon, you are in a suit, you are entertaining people, all those earning here and there. So we are encouraging this so that in the morning you are earning agriculture. In the day, midday, you earn entertainment, and the evening you earn in meals.
Agriculture is today based on contemporary technology to boost productivity, which has resulted in the increased usage of cottages. Each parish contains 25 cottage industries, and each of these has the potential to bring together 100 young people who are engaged in a specific cottage industry. The government, through the National Agriculture Research Organization, is also assisting the youth by equipping them with the right knowledge.
We planted in Kabare and in Kisoro. So we are targeting in 90 days time from the 2 days ago, we shall have known the production. So our target is to increase production and quality, not only production, but quality and production. Because we want to be the excelling, we want to compete, we want to lead, then others follow.
We are always looking at that person who looks dirty, that person who is working all the time, who has no time to rest, and probably that person who earns very little. How are we trying to make agriculture attractive to the young people? What we have done first is to ensure that our agriculture is looking at modern technologies. Technologies that increase productivity so that the youth can get more when they are putting less.
We are embracing technology. As the MD said, we are using the tractors. Time for the hand hoe is running out. So, but again, we use technology like the solar dryers because we don't want to lose our harvest. Our youth have been trained in post-handling harvest. So there is nothing like wastage this time.
Youth in the agriculture sector face enormous obstacles, not just in Uganda but around the world, including access to fertile land. Due to the scarcity of agricultural land, many young people are unable to pursue professions in the industry. However, social enterprises in Uganda are working to address this issue by creating social investments that give young people who work in agriculture access to land and other resources.
The youth don't have land. That has been a big challenge. Even when the youth say, I've finished school, I have nothing to do, they have no land. But we found that we have some adults out there who have land which they are not using. So we decided to start what we call social investment. We've been able to register social investors who say, I'm not using my land, but let the youth use my land, maybe for 5 years, to be able to achieve what they want.
These initiatives are essential for the growth and development of the agriculture sector in Uganda and can have a positive impact on the country's economy as a whole in the long run. Naomi Mtumba, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Let's now head into the constrained media. Now, 3rd May reminds global societies and governments of the importance of the power of media as the press freedom shrinks. Uganda is currently ranked the 2nd worst country for journalists in East African region. That is according to the 2022 edition of the World Press Freedom Index. Delayed salaries, low wages, brutality and poor working conditions dominate working press. Dialogue as the local industry forges means of growth as revenue streams shrink. The 2022 World Press Freedom Index report entailing working conditions for journalists in 180 countries and territories places Uganda as the worst country of any journalist to operate from East Africa. Compared to 2021, Uganda has dropped 7 places on the index published by the Paris-based NGO Reporters Without Borders. Last year, Uganda sat at 125 out of 180 countries. The numerous challenges including shrinking revenues, bad administration and licensing demands, among others, have collectively affected the growth of the industry. Kidnapping, violence, arrest, illegal detention and confiscation of equipment are some of the consequences that journalists face for criticism of socio-economic challenges. According to index research, working conditions of journalists have improved in East African countries except for Uganda. Members of Parliament took it upon themselves to cite lively examples of the dire situation.
I know that the welfare of journalists is very much compromised, and I can tell the country right now that I've gotten very many petitions. One of them is from journalists who have been working for CTV, and I am told that CTV journalists have spent more than a year without being paid. They were last paid in February of last year. And this petition is going to be taken to the Committee of ICT. It will also be taken to the floor of Parliament, because any media employer is obligated to pay the journalists just like other employees. And if there is any problem that anyone is encountering, it is very, very much important for any employer to explain to the employees. So I'd like to tell the journalists who work for CTV or who used to work for CTV, because I'm told the station has now been sold without the knowledge of the people who have been working there, and sold without paying the journalists who have been working there. It's very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate.
Research further informs us that journalists are among the country's worst paid professionals. Rare work contracts, and only a few reporters make more than $200, approximately 700,000 shillings per month. Such financial insecurity makes them susceptible for corruption. Woman Member of Parliament for Gulu, Betty Awol Ochan, suggests that better policies can eradicate a lot, including volatility.
A lot of issues. And these issues, I encourage these media houses also sometimes to sit and, approach some of us who are positive with them to probably take to Parliament better policies that will help also to promote them. But we have not done enough to the media houses, to the press, to let the press be able to operate well. There are gaps still in the policies. And when we also impose on payments by these media houses, we should also categorize and be considerate. You see that that media house is still what? It's still beginning. Just like what? Just like the business communities. If somebody is just a beginner.
As Uganda celebrates the day, discussions linger over the shrinking revenue for the media sector. Advertisement has headed for a downward trend, with changes in sales and marketing and a monopoly in public procurement a living crisis. Hefty licensing and non-protective policies have as well been cited as hindrances.
Media houses are supposed to pay as subscription to government, because we realize it is a little bit on a higher side, and we want to engage government on this very aspect. On the issue of advertisements and so on, of course, recently the President issued a statement, a decree, that UBC should be the only government entity given these adverts. Of course, we understand that this is not proper, because it will affect other media houses, where we think there should be a free economy. We are in a free economy. Therefore, everyone should be competitive in getting these bids or securing goods. We know it's very expensive for our media houses to pay subscription. So this one, as the Parliament, we are going to look into it, and we would ask the media houses to bring it as a petition, so that we can look into it and see how best we can protect it. On the issue of labor protections, we realize that we have laws in place, but they're not being implemented. So our concern as Parliament, as a media forum, we shall have to find means of making sure that we push government to put into action for these laws, because we have the labor protection, we have the Employment Act, we have so many laws related to labor protections.
Addressing underlined weakness in industrial governance policies such as licensing, revenue streams, and broader economic challenges that partake other production sectors are expected to aid growth of the industry. Bruna Nahabwe, Smart 24 TV, Business Today. All right, now let's head into sustaining museums and antiquities. Government and the World Bank have dedicated over 78 billion shillings to revamping museums and monuments. Key elements of the tourism industry, protection of the cultural heritage is expected to support tourism influx as the sector anticipates post-pandemic recovery and transformation. Martha Nimsima has more of this story.
According to Vision 2040 and the NDP 3 goals, creating museums may help disseminate knowledge about our culture's historical items and use tourism to support sustainable livelihood. Promoting the sustainable use of our heritage product would help preserve and promote Uganda's distinctive cultural character, create jobs and support equitable economic growth.
With our Vision 2040 and National Development Program 3 objectives on the conservation of natural and cultural heritage, the Ministry of Tourism, for us, the Ministry of Tourism, our theme is museums, our heritage. That's the theme in the case of Uganda. Museums, our heritage. The international theme is museums, sustainability, and well-being. Our theme is museums, our heritage. I think we agreed on that. This theme focuses on dissemination of information on how our people can leverage on heritage products for sustainable livelihoods.
The subsector of cultural heritage has contributed significantly to the restructuring of the tourism industry by bringing about $1,333 in a yearly income from both domestic and international travelers. The revenue generated by cultural heritage tourism is a result of the sector's capacity to attract a variety of visitors, including history enthusiasts, cultural enthusiasts, and nature lovers.
We see that cultural heritage subsector brings more than $1,333, if I'm picking the right figure very well, compared to 1,009 of meetings and of nature, then meetings and MICE, or MICE meetings and incentives. So we have been looking at promoting cultural heritage because worldwide or globally, cultural heritage brings a lot to different economies.
Government added the museum to the curriculum as part of a strategy aimed at promoting both the development of Uganda's cultural heritage and elevating the country as a top traveler destination in the region.
I think people should embrace their heritage. There is a lot of history here. There is a lot to learn in the museum. And I think the government has inculcated the museum into the curriculum of Uganda. That's why even actually we get more school children here. But I think the parents also need to know, because actually the most domestic visitors we get here, their parents who are coming with their children, they are asking them about the museum because they have studied at the school and they don't know about it. So they find themselves in here, but they don't know what is in the museum. But so I encourage each Ugandan out there to come and visit the museum, because there is a lot to learn about our history, how people used to live, and the current history.
Ministry is also in collaboration with the World Bank, SEDEP, and other development partners to generate funds for the renovation and reconstruction of existing museums and monuments in order to increase their appeal and give visitors an immersive cultural experience. Currently, the government has allocated 45 billion to help with this cause.
From the government, total for our projects for museums and monuments, we expect to inject about 45 billions, because that's what the feasibility told us. So it can be more or it can be less than that. But for the National Museum, World Bank awarded us $9 million. And so we have been, that's where we bought the truck.
As Uganda joins the rest of the world in celebrating International Museum Day on 18th May, heritage actors, partners from the public and private sectors, and the museum community in this sub-region will have to optimize and rethink the cultural heritage resources. Martha Nimsima, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Parish Development Board to the west. Now, the Office of the Prime Minister has taken part
in approaches and mechanisms of fighting poverty with a bigger aim of moving the country into middle-income status. Some of the interventions include Ntandikwa, Bona Bagagawale Youth Livelihood Program, the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, recently Emyoga, and the latest being the Parish Development Model, where the government intends to inject at least 30 million shillings per financial year to each of the 12,000 parishes in the country. While addressing hundreds of residents in Ruchiga, Honorable Prime Minister Robina Nabanja asked the people to embrace government programs such as the Parish Development Model, where she was verbally stormed with information that the money had been distributed to wrong beneficiaries. This money is not for the poor. Those living in poor conditions are supposed to get the money. Whoever is planning on stealing the money shall be arrested. They tell us that the PDM money is at the head office. We wait in vain. We fill the forms, but we still get no response. We were not properly sensitized and educated on this PDM. We were confused by the different approaches the leaders used to sensitize us. We filled the forms at first. They said that it was group, and eventually they said the forms must be filled individually. So we were quite challenged. Nabanja is adamant that this money should and does directly support the underprivileged members of society, not those who are thought to be doing better. She also asked the authorities to conduct extensive investigations into the beneficiaries for that money, promising to jail anyone who are not supposed to get these funds.
Now I am directing Mr. Chairman, the RDC, Chairman RDC. I am also going to send here the coordinator of PDM. Baba bazitwire kandi bali abagiga nimbasesemya.
Some of the leaders revealed that they wish to see improvement in the district, including the reliability of electricity in all places for equitable development, improving road network and infrastructure, among many other developments.
When we have electricity, we are talking of youth, because we talk about empowering youth and so on, welding. When we have electricity, it will help us so much. You heard me talking about the CD school, Nyakagabagaba, where we have everything. We even have computers in the store for the last 2 years. Just because of power, we don't have electricity.
We request the Prime Minister, together with Honorable Catherine, to help put out hospital on the district level. This will help most of the people in the area. Another issue that we need some help is electricity blackouts in Ruchiga and Chigozi sub-region. These are disrupting the businesses in this area.
These continue to pledge to follow up on the Parish Development Model scheme to ensure that the right beneficiaries gain from this project.
The program was rushed, and that's why I even call the leadership. At least the next time we're having such an interesting program, we give it time. We sensitize our people such that our people can benefit, especially the poor people.
International Women's Day is a global holiday celebrated annually on March 8th as a focal point in the women's rights movement, bringing attention to issues such as gender equality, reproductive rights, and violence and abuse against women. The event can, however, be celebrated by various districts on different days. Nobat Nyamahachi, Masi Katsime, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
And that now leads us to the end of Business Today. As always, thank you for the pleasure of your company. But before we close, let's have a look at our top stories.
In Business Today, Trade Ministry urges youth on microfinance uptake as fear of high lending rates persists. Government World Bank devote over 78 billion shillings for museums and monuments to preserve heritage and tourism. And Finance Ministry upholds 29 trillion shillings target in revenue come financial year 2023-2024.
Once again, thank you for joining us, and I would like to implore you, if you miss any of these stories, you could watch on our YouTube channel at Smart24TV Live and follow our social media platforms using the hashtag Smart24TV Now to be up to date with the latest business news within the region. Have a good night. I'm Rona Nahabwe. Winnie Wins and Naka in the sign language. Have a lovely evening.